Yeah, so I guess one of the things that I think of in terms of, again, using my pea brain, is that I've heard, a lot of reporting right now that a lot of these models, these LLMs, we used to call them, but now we have to call them models. A lot of these models that were massive and could only be contained in a data center, now they can shrink them down and put the entire model on your phone
Yeah, yeah.
or even on an app on your phone, where now you can go in and you can access the model for
Local.
specific local,
Yeah.
applications. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that, today, I mean, obviously the model for FSD resides on your car,
Right.
right? It is downscaled from what the original computed model is done in a high precision math environment like floating point 32 or something like this. And then it's quantized or downsized to say maybe integer math on the vehicle for the purpose of throughput. Okay. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. If you want, I can kind of go deep into that. But what it really says is what we're doing is we're taking this model and we're like shrinking it down to something that the processor, which is a hardware 4 processor, is a much smaller processor than anything we're talking about in the case of AI5, AI6. But that processor is perfectly capable of executing version 13, and I believe it'll be perfectly capable of executing version 14. But that does not come without optimization being done by the engineering team at Tesla. And some of that stuff is just simple stuff like, I shouldn't say simple, stuff like quantization, where they're basically mapping a number set to a smaller number space that is more computable, meaning smaller precision numbers that are more computable on a smaller piece of hardware. But but then there's all sorts of other optimizations that the engineering team is doing to kind of give it, think about it. It's like if your desire is to run at 15 hertz, 15 cycles a second through inference on the vehicle, and you take a model like version 13 and then you scale it to version 14, ostensibly supposed to be about 10x the number of parameters. In theory, while the processing is not exactly linear, just think of it like it is. That's like 10x the processing compute required. So that leads to the idea of, oh well, if it's 10x, you can either down downsize the cycles, or
Mhm.
you can try to optimize further to get more compute through. And there's probably some minimum cycle time that they're looking for. Anyway, what it comes down to is that, yes, to answer your question, the devices, these end node device, the edge devices,
Mhm.
whether they're vehicle or Optimus, uh, in other words, we're getting to the point where the embodiedness of these AIs are, from the inference side, is much more possible. I mean, we see it in devices like Optimus and and vehicle, because guess what? It's needed, right? We can't do cloud-based inference for full self-driving. That just doesn't work. As soon as you lose connectivity, the car crashes, right?
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: the AI6 chip on Tesla vehicles will be so powerful that certainly when the car is sitting idle, um, we can distribute inference across the fleet, and therefore, use that as a extremely large virtual data center.
Right. Right. As Elon has talked about.
Yeah, he's talked about it. It's I mean, whether they pay you for that or not is really quite irrelevant. The point of it is, just imagine that here what we do today is, or we, not me,
Ah,
but um, there's these data centers that are being built. They are, in a sense, very purpose built to building these large, coherent training clusters and inference centers, and they require a lot of, you know, cooling power, and it's all centralized at a location, which makes it kind of harder by some measure.
right.
Imagine that you can just distribute that inference across a fleet of idle Tesla vehicles. Now all of a sudden you can take these inference questions that are, I mean, think about like an LLM right now. Like if you go onto Grok and you ask a question, that question goes to a data center, and then is the inference is run there, and the answer comes back. So you've got in between you and inference is networking, right? It's going over
Yeah.
cellular or Wi-Fi, going over a bunch of fiber eventually gets to its target. And that piece of networking adds a lot of latency to the equation.
Mm-hmm.
But the compute side of inference for like questions to these LLMs is so heavy that the latency of the network is kind of meaningless noise.
Right.
Right. There are times when that latency would be meaningful noise, like for example, the case of just trying to do full self-driving in the cloud would not really work, right? Even if you had connectivity,
Right.
You would both have high degree of network latency and then some kind of like, you just don't have a precision in terms of every single, you can't build like a quality of service around that network. But anyway, yeah.
Okay. So let me take it two different ways. I want to go backwards first and talk about, does this capability that we're talking about, does that give you more hope or less hope that the folks like me that have hardware 3 will be able to handle this reduced, more optimized situation?
Well, not no. I think hardware 3 is a bit of an island that won't be served.
Okay.
I think that I feel, I mean, don't work at Tesla, so I can't say with certainty, but what I heard was we had a version 13, which was, let's call it 5x the number of parameters than 12. And then we heard that that at one point we heard that version 14, although I don't think anybody's called it that from Tesla, but they said, this next version, so we'll call it version 14, was like 4x the number of parameters. And then suddenly, and I don't remember when, but there was a sudden moment where Elon announced that it's going to be 10x.
Right.
And I made a comment about that. I wrote a post, and then he commented on that post. And so what I was saying there was that meant they had a lot of confidence that suddenly this version 14 could be scaled to 10x the size of version 13 and still run on hardware 4. But that also told me that in a way hardware 3 is an orphan.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that just gave it, because then I'm saying there's no way that they're going to run a 10x model. They're going to scale that down and without a lot of loss. Either that loss is in frequency of cycle or there's quantization loss where it becomes meaningfully deteriorate the decision framework of the neural net without getting specific about what that means. So I think hardware 3 is kind of like one of those things. It's like it's an orphan.
So that we don't have people out there that don't pay close attention getting all nervous. Elon has said that if that turns out to be true, and if hardware 3 cannot be a safe, unsupervised provider, then they will swap us out for free. So we'll see how all of that develops in the coming months.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume
I wouldn't take that bet, by the way, but anyway.
Yeah, so I have made the assumption, I've said it before on the channel, I think that will be for definitely for those who pay for or intend to use it as a robotaxi, would probably be for free. And then it might depend on whether you've been using it already, for full self-driving, because something way less than 50% of people use their current, even if they own the FSD, paid the 8,000 or 12 or whatever, it depends on when they bought it, Very few people are using it, and my count on the freeway has been overall on Teslas. I'm only seeing less than 20% that don't have their hands on the wheels.
Yeah. I mean, one of the complications there, and I'm not saying with this anything factual here, I'm just saying
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
guessing a bit, but one of the complications is I don't think that like every car made with hardware 3 from the beginning to the end point where hardware 4 replaced it may have a very different way that ECU, the boards containing, are contained in the vehicle. And I mean, not every one, obviously, but I'm saying in a series of vehicles, you change the way the housing for stuff. So maybe a certain set of vehicles are easy to swap, but a previous set are really hard to swap, like the board can't even fit.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, like when I worked at Rivian, there were so many things about where you put the boards. We just kind of labeled as ECUs, electronic control units.
Right.
Where you put the boards, the wiring harness. In this case, like we don't know, or I don't know. I should say I don't know, like what sensor upgrades would be required for that.
Sure.
Whether they're so there's a lot there. I personally think that, not having skin in the game, not having a hardware 3 vehicle myself, I think that from a robotaxi point of view, I kind of think it would be an orphan, but you have opinion on it. I just simply say that there's no way hardware 3 is going to fit
Okay.
version 14. I'll leave that.